We tend to think of teamwork as a soft skill, right? Something that's all about chemistry and just having good intentions. But what if we treated it like a complex system? Something we could actually analyze, engineer, and optimize for peak performance? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to put on our consultant hat and build the ultimate team. So let's just get right into it. We have all been there on a team that just clicks. It's firing on all cylinders and everything feels effortless. And yeah, we've also been on the other kind, the ones that feel like you're wading through mud just to get anything done. The difference between those two experiences, it isn't magic. It's the underlying system they're operating on. So, this brings us to the core idea here, the teamwork operating system. Seriously, think of it just like the OS on your computer or your phone. It is the foundational code that dictates how every single part works together. And it's made up of three core components: the structured processes, the flow of information, and the human drivers. Get these three things right, and your team is going to fly. Get them wrong, and well, you're looking at a total system crash. Now, what I absolutely love about this framework is just how elegant it is. It takes this huge, complex idea of teamwork and breaks it down into three core components that are MECE. Now, for those of you who don't know, that's a consultant term. It means mutually exclusive, so they don't overlap, and collectively exhaustive, which means they cover everything. So we have team mechanics, which is the what. We have team communication, the lifeblood, and team dynamics, the how. If we look at each of these, we can systematically figure out what's wrong and upgrade any team's performance. So here's our game plan for this analysis. First, we're going to master the nuts and bolts of team mechanics. Then, we'll dive into engineering the information flow with communication. After that, we'll navigate the tricky world of human dynamics, figure out how to resolve conflicts, and finally, talk about how to activate the team's full potential. Let's get to it. All right, first deep dive, mastering team mechanics. This is the architecture of our operating system. It's all about the tangible rules of the game, the repeatable processes that dictate how work actually gets done. This is what makes sure we're not just busy, but actually productive. And look, the most fundamental process for any team has to be the meeting. This playbook here isn't just about good manners, it's a critical control system. An agenda that gives you focus, punctuality that respects everyone's time, reviewing old action items that creates accountability, and assigning new ones ensures you're always moving forward. This isn't bureaucracy, folks. This is the basic code for turning talk into action. And let's be really clear about the goal here. All these mechanics, the agendas, the minutes, the processes, they are not the end goal in themselves. They are the machinery, and they are designed to produce one single critical output: high-quality decisions made over and over again. Without this machinery, decision-making just becomes chaos. It's driven by emotion, by politics, not by logic. This chart just breaks down the options perfectly. You've got authoritarian, which is fast but super risky because you get no buy-in. Voting, well, that just creates winners and losers, and that can kill team spirit. Consultative is getting better, but really, the gold standard for any complex, high-stakes project is consensus. And why is that? Because it forces a really tough debate that looks at all the angles. And most importantly, it guarantees that everyone is committed to the final decision. And believe me, that commitment is everything when it's time to execute. Okay, so we've got the architecture in place. Now we need to engineer the data flow. This brings us to our second component, communication. If mechanics are the architecture, communication is the data bus. It's the lifeblood carrying vital information through the whole system. And it's not a passive thing. You have to actively design and manage it. Now, a healthy operating system needs two different information flows. You've got vertical communication, which keeps everyone aligned with leadership and maintains control. But just as important is horizontal communication. This is where your peers talk to each other, where collaboration happens, where new ideas bubble up. It's where the real empowerment is. A bottleneck in either one of these flows can bring the entire team to a grinding halt. And, just like any software, our communication system is full of potential bugs. Think of these things: personal bias, being afraid to speak up to your boss, simple distractions. Think of them as lines of corrupt code. They distort the information, they lead to misunderstandings, to errors, and eventually to project failure. So how do we debug the system? Well, we install some software patches. Using standard terminology, that's like defining your variables so everyone's on the same page. Requesting clarification, that's your error checking function. Repeating information back, that's a data integrity check.
These simple habits make sure that the information sent is actually the information that's received. Every single time.
Okay, now for our third and, let's be honest, most complex component, navigating human dynamics. We've built the architecture, we've engineered the data flow. Now we need to understand the power source. This is the human element. This is the motivation that actually drives the entire system forward. To get motivation, we have to start with the classic, Maslow's hierarchy. The key business insight here is that you cannot motivate your way out of a problem at the foundation. You can't ask for peak creativity and innovation from someone who feels like they don't have job security or psychological safety at the bottom. So many leaders try to skip levels, and it just never, ever works. You have to build from a stable base. Now this is a total game changer. Hertzberg says that satisfaction and dissatisfaction are not opposites. They're two completely different scales. What does that mean? It means all the effort you put into salary and working conditions, what he calls hygiene factors, that won't motivate your team. It'll just stop them from being dissatisfied. Real motivation, the kind that gets people to go the extra mile, comes from a totally different place. Recognition, achievement, the work itself. As a leader, you have to be working on both of these scales at the same time. Alderfer's ERG theory gives us a more flexible way of looking at this. It boils Maslow's 5 levels down to 3: existence, relatedness, and growth. But the key difference is, it suggests these are not a strict ladder you have to climb. A person can be pursuing growth and self-actualization even if their need for, say, relatedness isn't totally met. Honestly, this reflects the messy reality of our work lives a lot better than a rigid pyramid. Now, here's the thing. When you have motivated people with strong opinions, which is a good thing, conflict is going to happen. It's inevitable. And that brings us to our next section. The goal isn't to get rid of conflict. That's impossible. The goal is to reframe it, to see it not as a system failure, but as productive friction that, if you manage it right, actually creates forward motion. And this right here is one of the most powerful tools in any consultant's toolkit, the effort/impact matrix. When a team is just stuck in a conflict, this simple grid cuts right through all the emotion and forces a rational conversation about solutions. You immediately zero in on that top left box, the quick wins. These are the high-impact, low-effort fixes that build momentum and restore the team's confidence. And just as importantly, you learn to avoid that bottom right box, the thankless tasks, that just drain all your energy for very little gain. And here's a perfect example. Imagine the team at ABC Inc. They're dealing with a big design flaw, and customers are getting angry. The engineers, they want to do a full, high-effort redesign, a major project. But by using this matrix, they had to ask a different question. What's the fastest way to reduce customer pain right now? They found a few low-effort software patches that fixed 80% of the issues. Those were their quick wins. It immediately made customers happier, and crucially, it bought them the time they needed to properly plan that bigger redesign without panicking. So we've designed our system, we've engineered the data flow, we understand the power source, and we know how to debug it. The very last step is implementation, activating potential. This is where we install all the necessary upgrades to our Teamwork OS through really targeted training. When it comes to training, you've got a clear trade-off to analyze. Classical instructor-led training is fantastic for getting immediate feedback, and you can adapt it on the fly, but it's expensive per person and tough to scale. On the other hand, technological tools like online courses, sure, they have a higher startup cost, but they are incredibly scalable, flexible, and repeatable. The right choice just comes down to a cost-benefit analysis of what your team actually needs. Ultimately, it all comes down to this. Training should never be seen as just an expense on a spreadsheet that you try to minimize. It's an investment that you need to optimize. The key metric isn't how many people completed the training, it's the return on investment. The goal is to install upgrades that give you a measurable return through higher performance, smarter decisions, and faster execution. We've covered the entire framework, from the nuts and bolts of mechanics all the way to the complexities of human dynamics. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Take a hard, analytical look at your own team. Run a diagnostic. Which component of its operating system is the biggest bottleneck right now? Is it your processes, your information flow, or your motivational drivers? Because identifying that bottleneck, that is the first and most important step to unlocking your team's true potential.